Okay, so welcome to Arcade Division. We have here me, Doga, Nix, and Pepto,
Yo.
and we're gonna do a little discussion about.
Do you think a retro library is important for companies to have? For
So,
example, I don't know, like
Well,
the original Mario game.
well, first of all, let's get our standings in order.
So
Which side of the fence are we on? Are you guys opposed or against the idea? Okay, so for me,
are you in support or against the
yeah.
idea?
okay.
So for me, let me just get my standpoint out of the way, just so you guys see where I'm coming from here. But
For sure.
I think it's not necessary to really have a retro library, though I do appreciate what it does, and if it's available, it is greatly appreciated.
That's interesting because I
I see.
kind of like the retro games, at least for them to be available. I can go into it later, but I would prefer for companies to have the library of their older games available for people to play.
I agree. I feel as if there's been this just weird shift in terms of companies doing like these lackluster attempts at cashing on the success of their back catalog or retro libraries, but not actually appreciating them for what they are and how much like of where they're at nowadays has been like the cultivation of that back catalog and those retro libraries that put them in that position in the first place. So to then immediately just push that like to the side in favor of doing new stuff and not even like give it its like flowers, give it the credit that it truly deserves. I feel like it's a little backwards, especially if it's like a bunch of good games. Like it's not even like we're talking like for instance like Nintendo, say Sega, Xbox, Sony. Like we could go down the list of just all the different. There's a lot of good stuff. There's also a lot of shovelware and a lot of garbage. But there's a
Well, yeah.
lot of good stuff in each of those libraries that I just feel like doesn't really get the chance to see the light of day past its initial release, which I think is just
And
backwards. But
and and that's how I feel. I feel like a lot of games are just forgotten, and the only
yeah,
people that remember them are the people that were between that 3 to 5 year mark when the game came out, which
exactly.
is kind of sad to think about. You know that a lot of good games have been lost in time, and because whatever the company's thoughts are in the game, that they don't want to showcase the game further, or for whatever reason, they're even hard to emulate, especially Nintendo games, because Nintendo values their games and they want you to use them only on their consoles, which I understand. But a
Yep.
lot of their games are lost in time because I don't know how to explain if it
Exactly.
makes sense.
It does.
Like when it comes to the retro catalog, I believe that's where remakes and remasters kind of step up. If a
Right.
game truly is as popular as certain people in said fan base believes, me being in a niche fan base such as Knights, right? Knights into Dreams. If
Right.
I believe that franchise was truly worth coming forward, it should have happened in a remake. So in a way, I did get my answer in Knight's Journey of Dreams.
Right.
However, it wasn't a true to faith retelling. All right, and I
So
can understand where people come from, where they want a true to form way to play the original. But at
Right.
the same time, with a lot of games coming tied down with peripherals,
Yep.
I would prefer a tech enhancement over
No.
bringing something old to the future. I don't need to keep playing the original Super Mario Bros. So many times when I have already so many different places to play it.
So like
Right.
Peto was saying, that to maintain what was good about the game and what made the game memorable for a lot of players, I would say,
Mhm.
and move that forward rather than get all of that lost in time,
Yep.
which a lot of times the bad and the good gets mixed together.
True. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just disheartening because there's clearly like a want for the retro library, as you can easily see when like, for instance, Nintendo drops a classic console, as they've just started really doing recently with the NES Classic and the Super Nintendo Classic. Like those things sell like hotcakes, but a part of it is due to just the fad of like getting on like the next like new thing and whatnot. But I also feel like there's a big want for some of these games to come back into the light of day and be playable in their purest form and not just trying to cash in on the craze of the franchise or that specific game entry or whatever the case is with like a lackluster release in modern day time, which is what I feel like a lot of game developers are moving towards instead of actually just capturing like the essence. And again, there's a lot of examples where it goes correctly. For instance, like with the Resident Evil 2 remake and the Resident Evil 3 remake, like those were like really like good acclaimed games.
But
But
how do
then something
you?
like the Silent Hill 2 remake, where it's just like doesn't even pale in comparison to the original.
How would whatever company be able to know what I thought on whatever game is good and what I want, or what games I want to bring forward and which ones I don't? And Bayonetta, for example, got into Smash. It was people just making a joke and it was taken serious, or
Right.
that's how I see it.
It was actually a popularity thing, so
It was?
she
I
was
don't-
officially voted in. Whether or not people agree
We're
now,
Yeah.
it was the majority vote. Claims Nintendo, that kind of a
I don't
topic.
know how it was, but I'm just saying how I didn't even know about this poll till years later. So how would whatever company would know which games to bring forward?
I'd say you base a lot of it based on statistical data that you already have. Like if you go back to a game, see how many sales that game got, kind
Mhm.
of thing, based on release or like a specific period of time where like they were tracing or tracking down those sales. Like if it looks like this like made like a big profit margin, then that's like decent grounds, for instance, to put that game in that retro library if they're even like deciding if like they're gonna bring it back or not. Whoever it is can just take the time to go online and literally like just siphon through that catalog or through that retro library to say, okay,
But
this
who?
game, this game, this game, and this game, and this game were like critically acclaimed games that it seems like a lot of people enjoyed, and then these ones clearly got ones out of like five. It takes time, but I feel like if you put the effort in there, then like you can clearly like decipher which is like a good thing and a good entry that should be a part of this list here.
I have a couple examples I actually want to share.
For sure.
The first one I'm gonna bring up is Sonic Generation. I'm bringing this up in a way because you did mention at one point the pure way to play an original game. So if you're taking something like Sonic Adventure, where you have, I guess in this case, the pure way to play it on the Dreamcast, that did not align completely with the developer's expectation due to limited technology. I remember reading somewhere, I don't know if I can find the exact quote, where one of the developers was saying Sonic Generations allowed them to model Chaos exactly the way they envisioned him, and
Right.
now makes it the definitive version of Chaos. And I think that something like that is important, where if it makes a big enough statement, it would naturally be brought forward, right?
I see.
Another thing I wanted to mention was the Need for Speed kind of franchise, where they kind of have a sweet spot in the community with Underground Most Wanted due to its customization and its livelihood.
What do you mean?
In Need for Speed Most Wanted or Underground, those were like the most popular games. Those were like the pinnacle. Everything after it seems to have gone downhill because they're kind of missing the point. But now that it's been brought
Addressed.
forward, it's seemingly not as good as the original still. Like something a little bit soulless is happening.
Right.
Because maybe they don't really
So
understand what the people are asking for.
So I just wanted to kind of bring up an example of like a good port or remake or example of the past coming forward, and a not so good example, just to put
Right.
it in perspective. And I kind of want to end off with the final example of, I remember there was a little bit of a debacle with Nintendo on the
Yep.
Wii when they first brought in their what do they call it, the WiiWare?
Right.
The
Yep.
Wii what?
WiiWare.
What about it?
Where they brought in all their old games, but some people weren't happy with the fact that it wasn't the total catalog due to many reasons, such as licensing, lost source codes, and things like that. So
And that happens a lot.
so in one aspect, you can bring forward the library, but it kind of feels like an all or nothing thing. Either all the games from the original have to be there, or none of it
Right.
feel left out. So, like,
True.
in this
Yeah.
example, I also want to throw in Jet Set Radio, where the previous or the original is much more available than the sequel, Future. where
Yep.
Future can literally only be played on Xbox. And even though it's not as old as the original, it's still technically kind of locked away on a system.
Then
Yeah.
when should companies bring back whatever games? What's the time gap? And if they do, why
Tell
don't
Rockstar.
bruh, 7 years? Maybe 8, a decade. Okay, but what's his name? What about if they just bring one game at the time rather than bringing a whole library of games? For example, let's say they release today Mario 64, and
Right.
and 5-10 years from now they remake it. I forgot
Say it
where I
again.
was going with this.
To the example that you're speaking about now, Nintendo's technically doing that with the Switch Online
Yep.
like service that they have, which is the NES and the SNES Online thing, where they started off with just like a base, like 20 or how many ever games that they released initially, and then monthly they would proceed to then add like a decent like plethora of games moving forward. But then that service like started to slow down. So the amount of games that they were releasing became like lackluster kind of thing, and things that should have been like pivotal games that should have been with the service from the beginning and from the get-go, such as Donkey Kong Country, which just came out I think last month, like weren't there. Which is interesting that you brought up like the Wii Shop channel and it's the Wii Virtual Console and its library and things of that sort. Uh, just a couple moments ago, because I feel like that was like that was like the pinnacle of exactly what we're talking about. There felt like there was a genuine effort to make this available to everyone. Whereas like I just bought the 3DS recently, and there's a bunch of different games that are on there available right now that I can purchase and play that should be on the Switch or should be on another service that Nintendo should offer, where the focus solely is just the retro library. But yeah, that doesn't exist.
I got a kind of question that I want to lead into here. You mentioned before that usually these games, or you would think that these games, these retro games, would be drawn up and made available due to the desire for people to play them, right? How well they did in the past is reason enough to bring them forward, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So let's say, for instance, how do we not know that what happened with the WiiWare Virtual Console to now
Right.
wasn't a result of the same statistics? Those games, not even though they were brought forward, weren't making the same amount of money before. Because the reason why I'm taking the standpoint I'm taking is because I believe that the future of gaming, or the future of these games, kind of depend on the experience they have to offer. If we're like, how long should we cater to these older games? How long do we have to play Donkey Kong or make that available? And that leads into like my next question type thing. I know you haven't really had a chance to answer that first one. Just for now,
For sure.
let's just pretend that these Donkey Kong Country didn't make it off the WiiWare Virtual Console because
Yep.
not many people bought it like they used to. Both you and Nick's kind of brought up this point that's kind of bouncing in my head now. Just should there be like, I guess, a way to universally play these retro games? Because now that they're available on the WiiWare for the Nintendo Wii, who's to say that's not just enough? They brought them back once. Do we need to do it again? Do we need to do it a third time? Do we need to turn this into GTA 5?
I see what you mean. To your second point,
Because right now we're just kind of
I
talking
would ask
specifically Nintendo, right?
exactly.
But
So-
on a more universal standpoint, how are these
Right.
old games going to keep their longevity?
Wait, so you're saying they can only be brought up or brought back one, and then when is that, and when are they gonna stop bringing?
Well, remember, a game could be like kicked in the nuts just because of licensing, right?
But after that ship sailed and the Wii was done and pretty much like lived out its life cycle, that retro library died with it as well. The last question, like I guess I pose to your question, which doesn't make sense, is what steps should companies take to actually preserve their back catalogs if it's important to them? So I personally feel like it's something that is important and should be factored in on like a consistent basis. Like, to be honest with you, like if the games are good and they've had like an impact on a lot of people's just enjoyment of like video games as a entertainment source and things of that sort of nature, there should be an opportunity or an option for those people to go back and play those games as frequently as they'd like, as much as they'd like.
How I see it is every company having their own Steam, basically
Marketplace, exactly.
a
Yeah.
style where if you want whatever game, yeah, you pay full price for it, of course. However, you'll be able to play it in whatever, I don't know, your PC or in a console, with their console of their choice. But it would be something that you would either have to pay for because they have to make money out of that, right?
So like even to
Yep.
take it one step forward, like as you guys just said, a Steam page like a Steam like page, basically Nintendo, Xbox, and Sony would have their own sort of shop from their website where you can download these old games and pay for them, rather than just so it's made available so people don't have to resort to emulation. I think that's good to wrap it up on.
Yeah.
We kind of answered the question, gave it our thought,
Thank you.
and even came to a sort of conclusion. I guess is up to the future now on whether or not
it happens or not.
Companies can come up with the same idea or something better.
With that being said, we now open it to the exactly. Yep.
I guess all that's left to do now is to throw this to the comments in the community. Let us know some of your favorite games that are now lost in time, games you want to see come forward, games you may have been interested in but haven't gotten to play, and games you're happy that didn't come back. Arcade Division out.